Hey everybody, this is Hal Runkle, author of Scream-Free Parenting and your host for today's webinar on all things homework and school related. And you guys have, well, first of all, amazing attendance. Tons of you guys have signed up, and the questions that you sent in are more than we've ever received. And so that creates a good problem is one, we have a lot of material to cover. Two, here's the bad part of that problem is that we want to also give you time to send in questions as we're going as well, because I love that kind of almost like radio show feel where you're sending in questions and we're answering them directly. So we're going to try and strike a balance between the two, because a number of your questions that you'd sent in already have very similar themes. And so we're hoping to address a number of your questions by just asking a few of them that seem to be representative of all of these various themes. So what I'm going to do right now is turn it over to Sarah Hawley, our Director of Learning and Growth, who has so developed the Pause platform that I know all of you have already signed up for and have started your free trial of, if not bought the course. Sarah, I'm turning it over to you, and you're going to guide us in which questions to answer.
All right, great. Thanks and welcome to everybody. We hope that you do have other questions to send in, and you can click the little Q&A button at the bottom to be able to send in those questions. And so let's go ahead and get started with our first one, and that is from Mike, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you, Hal. Okay. Can you provide some insights into how to address the ever-looming issue of procrastinating until the last minute to start or finish a homework assignment? He says, my wife and I have tried to get our kids to see the value of finishing an assignment as soon as possible by showing them that it will allow them to play or watch TV or engage in activities without the anxiety of completing their assignment. And I love his line right here. They are receptive in the abstract, but not necessarily in the application. So I know that I can relate to this issue. So what are your thoughts, Hal?
Well, I'm going to be biased because I am a world-class procrastinator. And one of the things I learned in order to make this transition myself was a couple things. One, I had to taste the pain of that. And so often we don't allow our kids to taste the pain of the natural outcoming of procrastinating. What we give them is the pain of us screaming at them at the last minute and prodding them and our anxiety spilling over onto them. And so that is what we think is going to then spur them. But what that does is it transfers the responsibility of getting it done from them to us when we're the parents. And that's ultimately the problem, is when we're taking more responsibility for them completing this than they are. And then we complain that they don't take responsibility for it. Well, how can they if I'm getting it jacked up and I'm all, instead of allowing them to taste the natural consequences of that and letting them know that your relationship with them is not going to be changed by their behavioral choices. You're going to exercise consequences for that, but let them taste a consequence that doesn't come directly from you. Because when only the consequences are coming directly from parents, then it makes it really, really difficult for them to fully own something. Because their whole job, when you think about it, this is what's happening in schools, they are getting educated apart from you so that they can be even more apart from you and somehow still function on their own. But every time our anxiety gets all jacked up about what they're doing or not doing in school, what we're actually doing is pulling them closer. We're pulling them closer and allowing our anxiety to infect them. And so then their motivation is no longer tied to pursuing this dream of their own, of getting educated and feeling good about accomplishing things. Their anxiety is just, well, I just got to break away from mom and dad because their anxiety is smothering me. And what's interesting is, paradoxically, they will do more of the very thing that led us to clamp down on them or pull them closer in the first place. It's like a dog returning to its vomit. We continue to do it, and they continue to push away. And the way of pushing away is saying, well, fine. You don't think I'm doing it right? Well, watch what happens when I don't do it at all. And so their job is now no longer to persevere through the difficulty of the assignment. Their job is now to show mom and dad that they don't have control of me. And certainly as kids become teenagers, they can become masters of this in that they will cut off their nose to spite their face. They will punish themselves in order to show you that it's their homework, not yours, that it's their problem, not yours. And they will willingly own that problem. Here's a story I've been thinking about telling, and it relates to so many of your questions. Hopefully you can find something in this. But when I was in 10th grade, I got my best report card ever. Now, I was pretty much a horrible student when my whole family kind of blew up. I was a good student, and then the whole family blew up in divorce, and it was awful. And after that, just didn't do anything. Now, what the problem was is I was full of potential because I had taken some IQ test or whatever. And so it infuriated my father so much that I didn't get good grades. And finally, though, I got this report card of 5 A's and 1 B. And this best report card I've ever got. And I showed it to him, and he said, well, I couldn't have been straight A's. So as a way to punish him for that, I punished myself by not getting one more A on any report card the rest of my entire high school career, which meant the college choices. I barely graduated high school. Now, obviously, I somehow found a way to turn it around, but it was in college when it was all on me. And they had no idea what I was doing. And I just kind of woke up to this, what do I want? Regardless of what I think they want, what do I want? And sidebar, what was interesting is years later, well, actually in college, now here's what happened. I got straight A's the second semester of my freshman year. And my dad said, well, why couldn't you have done that this whole time? Now, I don't want to cast dispersions on my father too much because years later I was married and we were playing golf. I've been playing golf my whole life and my dad had never played. So he went and we played golf together, and he was terrible. Like any adult who just picks up a golf club, you're going to be terrible, right? But I remember like on the 17th hole, he'd been beating himself up. My dad did. This is the hardest game on earth. Just relax, whatever. But he got one on the green on a par 3. His first shot got on the green. And he was like, wow. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. Wow. And he said, man, why couldn't I have been doing that the whole time? And it occurred to me that he was just replaying a script that had been said to him, that he'd been living with that his whole life. And he replayed it to me. And so it was one of the things that fueled me to say, you know what, I'm going to do things differently with my kids. I'm going to let them own it from the very beginning, which means if, you know what, they're up in the middle of the night working on a project or it's due, they know it's due before I know it's due. That's one thing about procrastination that we don't think about is I can only harp on them about procrastinating if I know what their assignments are. But that's a bill of goods that's been sold that I should be more knowledgeable about what's going on with their homework than they are. My wife is a teacher, and so we're both highly educated, master's degree, whatever. We believe in it wholeheartedly, but I remember early on we went to a kindergarten teacher night or something like that, and everybody goes in. It was like second grade, and we noticed our son's desk because it was meticulous and totally OCD. So we noticed that was his. So we sat there, and then everybody asked the question towards the end. You go through their whole classes, whatever. And somebody said, "So who started on the science project, right?" And are we being punked in this? I thought it was the kids, but we looked at each other and like, should we know about this? Because I really don't know about this assignment. And that may sound like we're completely hands off. No, it's not. It's just we refused early on, and we were taught by some great parents to do this. It's got to be their responsibility more than it ever is yours, and that means they have to know about it more than you do. This is counterintuitive, and it's counter what you've heard. You got to be involved, got to be involved. Absolutely, you got to be involved. But this idea that we know what their assignments are in real time, and we know what their grades are in real time, we can check anytime online, is part of the huge problem. Check every 3 weeks, just like we used to, right? Check every 3 weeks unless you hear from the teacher. Be curious with your kids, right? Let them come to you asking, hey, do you struggle with procrastination ever? You know, that's what you want to do, is how can I parent in such a way that they actually come to me, seek me out? Okay, next one. That was a long answer, but I think it answered, hopefully, a lot of questions.
I think it did, Hal. And I have to share a little story with you because my son struggles with procrastination. At least that's how I would word it, because he would not word it that way.
Yeah.
And I discovered this when he had a summer project that was due, and he had to take it in the first day of class. And so he waited until the day before school started to do the entire project. And so it was an entire day long worth of him working on this project. And I was squelching my anxiety with everything I had in me. And I remember asking him at the end, so what would you do differently next time? And he said, I don't think I'd do anything differently, because, you know, I really need that last minute motivation to do the project. And it blew me away, but it showed me how different he is from me, and that I can't impose my standards and my expectations, what works for me, on him, because that doesn't work for him. Right. And it's maddening. It is. And it's maddening because I see it in a lot of different areas of life, not just school. But like you say, that's something he has to figure out on his own, not trying to just get mom and dad off of his back.
And I noticed someone just typed into the chat, what about when they blame you for not reminding them to do their projects or homework? And I love that question, because it's indicative of the whole problem. Meaning, if you have started this process of becoming their homework alarm clock, then you're going to set up the expectation that you are going to continue to do that job forever. Instead, we have to discipline ourselves to not ask them every day whether or not they have homework. Because if we're doing that for them, then they never have to learn to do that for themselves. So when they blame me for not reminding them, then we can have a conversation. How have I communicated that that's my job? And I'm really meaning that, because I don't want to communicate that that's my job. Because anytime I'm asking you about homework, I want that to be coming from a place of, hey, I'm just checking in with you because I love you and want to be involved in your life. Not, my anxiety says that you're not going to remember, so I better remind you. And the tone of those two messages can absolutely be smelled 100 miles away by our kids. So when they ask you that, then realize, okay, somehow I've set up that expectation and I need to apologize for that. I remember my daughter, second grade, some of you heard me tell the story, but second grade, she was talking about how much homework she had later. And so when we came home, I told her, hey, tonight we're going over to a neighbor's house for dinner at 6:30, so you cannot do your homework then. She was like, well, I don't want to do my homework now. Well, I didn't say you had to do your homework now. I just said you can't do it then. Well, I need to do my homework. Then do it. Well, I don't want to do my homework. Then don't do it. And I looked at her and very as lovingly as I could and said, honey, whether you do your homework is up to you. Now, was I lying to her? Of course not. I was telling her the absolute truth, because I cannot make her do her homework. I can't. We think we can, but no, you cannot make somebody do something that they don't also choose to do. You can intimidate them, we can scream at them, we can sit on top of them until they get it done, but they still have to do it, and it still has to be a choice of theirs. So why not just give them that choice in the beginning? Whether you do, it's up to you. Now, whether I exercise consequences for grades, that's up to me. And we can talk about those in a second. Another follow-up that came in, I love you guys sending in follow-ups. Would it appropriate to allow a 7 or 8-year-old to stay up past bedtime in order to work on homework? They procrastinated at the last minute. Usually, we're told about this right before bed. You know, sometimes, yes, let them taste it. Sometimes, no. Natural consequence is, look, you waited too long and we care about your sleep, so no. or you're allowed one more hour, and that's it. Gosh, man, that reminds me of this story. Sarah, you probably remember this story, but I hadn't thought of it till now. But when Hannah had this project and she told us about it like at 8:30, it was this big, huge leaf project where you had to collect leaves from around the tree in the fall and had to pin them on a poster board, and then had to do a little paragraph, from Google on which each tree, blah, blah, blah. And she was like 8:30. Oh my gosh, what? Oh, this project, got to get it done, And we were like, well, we're not going shopping. So if you can find some poster board somewhere, that's great. Well, what do I do? What do I do? And I said, look, you know what? It's late. You can work on this for like 30 minutes. But no, if you want to get up early and do this project on your own, that's your prerogative, right? So it was one of the coolest things when we were getting up very early before dark, and we saw our little, I think she was like 9. We saw a little flashlight out in the trees right outside our house. It was amazing. Shocked us for sure. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have had a situation where it was like the last minute, oh, I need these supplies. And so I charged my son for my time to go purchase the supplies. And I charged him whatever it was he made. I don't know. He was little, but he sometime would work for my husband, making maybe $5 an hour. So I charged him $5 an hour to go pick up his supplies because he'd waited to the last minute. So there was a consequence. It wasn't like mom was just going to rescue, but yeah. Okay. A couple of people have sent in some very similar questions. Wendy in this question: how do we balance encouraging and pushing smart kids, or just kids in general, to meet their potential without pushing them too hard and causing more stress? Glennis also sent in a question. Glennis and her husband are overachievers, and so how do they not push that onto their kid and allow him to develop into his own student? So.
Okay, I like both of those. All right, let's talk about the potential thing, because I think that's one of the things that relates them. That when you are overachievers and when you have done well in education, then it becomes very easy to push that onto them and make that an unspoken expectation, especially if they've demonstrated some form of capability. And that's where we get that nasty, nasty word, potential. I want to rid your homes of that word forever, because that is like you are constantly less than what you could be. And if you do well, there's no congratulations for doing well, because you're just being who we always thought you should be. And it hangs around a kid's neck forever that there's no possibility of excelling. There's only being adequate to the potential I demonstrated somehow on some test, or because I got the brain power of mom and dad. And it just doesn't ever go well, because it lends itself to this: you've got so much potential and yet you're ruining it because you're not, quote unquote, applying yourself, with what I was always told, what so many of us were always told. So let's just stop talking about potential, because here's the deal. Potential is we base that on ability, but passion has to accompany ability in order for excellence to occur in one specific area. That's why we get so frustrated. My kid's so good. I made this mistake. My son, his golf swing is unbelievable, but if he doesn't like golf, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't like the sport that he has demonstrated capability, it doesn't matter if he doesn't like it. So if they don't have passion for this, then the capability doesn't matter at all. And sometimes our pushing on the capability, because of the quote potential, actually robs them of the passion that they have. So it's a tough job of parenting, but it is bedrock. My kids are not me. They're not an extension of me. It is not loving for me to project my experience, my expectations onto them. And you have been sold this lie by so many parenting experts out there that kids rise up to the level of expectations. And that is horse blank. That is horrible, horrible teaching, because what you're saying is they need to not pursue anything from within them. They need to pursue everything that's outside of them. And think about it. Do you do well trying to match up to the expectations of your parents, or do you do better trying to pursue your own inner goals? And here's the relationship. The more expectations my parents put on me, the more expectations we put on our kids, the less they have the room to discover what those goals are for themselves and pursue them themselves. I mean, I can take you to every AA group in the world, and there are plenty of people who are going to talk about the expectations that they tried to and still trying to meet up with. So what does it look like to let them develop their own goals? Get curious. And let's just breathe this truth in. Well, let's just ask this question. Do your kids want to do well? Just think about it. If you operate with the understanding that, you know what? No, they don't. They don't want to do well. They want to sit around and do nothing all day, right? That's not true. It is not true. Even when they're playing video games, do they want to get better? Yes, they want to get better at everything. And they know they have to go to school. And so many school issues arise because they're struggling or it's struggling to meet up with what they think is going on around them. And maybe they've got some learning differences that make that more difficult, or they're struggling to meet up mom and dad's impossible expectations. And that's not fair to them. So our number one job is to help them learn to discover who they are as a student. Our number one job is to give them the space to become fully themselves. And this means recognizing, again, they're not me. They're not an extension of me. And as my daughter told me one time when I was taking too much responsibility and trying to help her pick her electives that would be better on a college application, blah, blah, she just said, "Dad, stop trying to make me into a better version of you." Yikes. And I thank her for it.
So moving right along, kind of moving out of that same topic, there are a lot of parents who are writing in and talking about how unmotivated their kids are.
Right.
So they don't work hard. They don't care about school. All they care about is video games, or all they care about is playing. How do you motivate your kids, or how do you back off of that? Do you just get curious about what does motivate them? How would you answer that?
Well, certainly, I love what you just said. Yes, you get curious about what does motivate them. You also set boundaries in place in terms of what space and place, in terms of what's available to them and what's not. That's great that you love video games. You're allowed to play an hour a day, right? Well, what am I going to do? Well, I don't know. You're going to have to figure it out. They love to play. That's fantastic. You know, you get a couple hours a day. Play outside. That's wonderful. Part of the reason why kids get unmotivated is it is a defense mechanism against the pressures that they feel that they cannot meet. And I see that time and time again. I think what would be really helpful is if we began to recognize that this unmotivated kid is a form of learning difference. Right? We're not saying disability, just learning difference. And there's lots of problems associated with schools that we are way too form-fitting for every student. That we could address that globally. But with your particular kid, why do you define them as unmotivated? Get curious at what you are observing that shows that they're unmotivated, and then get curious why. What's going on? Do they struggle with something? Are they struggling for the first time? I hear a lot of times where suddenly he's unmotivated. A lot of times that means that they're encountering something at school that is really, really hard, and this lack of motivation is a defense mechanism. So often what I see is the lack of motivation is a defense mechanism against you, because you know what? You can say he's unmotivated to do school, but he's really motivated to resist your efforts to get him more motivated. And I didn't want to encourage that. We used to do this thing on stage where I'd bring a volunteer up and have them stand in front of me and walk in front of me at a certain pace. And then I had them slow down, and I would come behind them and push from behind. And then I would ask the audience just a basic physics question. What direction did their body move when I pushed them? Well, it moved backwards. Because whenever we feel that pressure, then we're going to recoil against it. And so when our kid demonstrates the slightest sense of lack of motivation, we think, oh, I got to motivate them. I got to push them from behind, you know, with a stick, and I've got to, entice them from ahead with a carrot and treat them like a donkey. And then, of course, the famous line, I wonder why they're acting like a jackass. But it's because I have started this process by taking too much responsibility for them, behind them or in front of them, instead of walking along beside them. If you operate, boom, with the assumption that they want to do well, that they like doing well, people enjoy doing well on a task, then let's say, hey, something's going on that's, what makes it really difficult for them to do well. Could be that they are bored out of their minds and they need more challenging classes. It could be that they're encountering some social situations in school, or bullying, or something that is really making them uncomfortable. It could be that they're suddenly struggling with a learning difference that they did not struggle with before. There's lots of possibilities other than he's just lazy and he doesn't care. Unmotivation. Sorry, yeah, you go.
So if you're a parent who is realizing that you've been trying to push your kid and motivate them when they are unmotivated, where do you go from here? How do you start over? What does it look like?
Right. And that's begin to think about your posture with them. And so what does it look like for me to come along beside them? So I'm not trying to push them, entice them, and I'm not trying to prod them, and I'm not going to punish them. What does it look like? And schedule a student-teacher conference with the teachers and the kid. This is something we've harped on forever, but do not have a parent-teacher conference without the kid in the room. It's the kid's grade. Otherwise, what happens is the parent and the teacher are then blaming each other for the lack of motivation of the kid. Meanwhile, the only person who can change the behavior of the kid is not even in the room. So let's all three work together with the assumption that they want to do well. And so you say, well, all they want to do is video games. Do they want to do well in video games? That desire to excel is there. So if that is passionate, then say, all right, but there's got to be limitations on that, because that's life. And so one of the things I love, the suggestions I love, is you give them a budget, a time budget on video games, for instance, that, hey, you got 5 hours of this week and you can spend them however you like. But if you think about it, that our main job as parents is to equip our kids to manage themselves, not equip ourselves to manage them. And that is the critical difference. Our job is to equip our kids to manage themselves, not equip ourselves to manage them. So what does it look like to hand more of this over to them? So you got a kid, you motivate, unmotivated. Okay, take the kid tonight to Dairy Queen, just the two of you, and just text him. Just text him, hey, you, me, Dairy Queen, 6 o'clock. All right. And then tell me about school. Sometimes seems like you don't really like it. Tell me about what's the hardest thing about school. Get incredibly curious and not prescriptive. Well, here's what you need to do. We need to have a talk, and oh gosh, no. Those conversations need to be about this kind of discovery process. So tell me what I could do that would be better. Do you think I harp on you too much? Right? Does that make it harder? I can't tell you how many conversations I've had like this in the therapy room, where the kid finally is able to, yes, you pushed me. It's like I can't ever do it right, Or the teachers, they don't understand, or we begin to discover a learning difference. But you can't get in that discovery mode if you've already prescribed, if you already defined, you diagnosed it as the kid's lazy, and then the prescription is they need more motivation from me.
Excellent. Okay, I have another question, and this one has been sent in. How do you, actually, let me switch and do this one. What about checking over homework or helping somebody, your child, get through their homework that's difficult?
Yeah.
Or, they have questions about homework. How much is too much?
Well, those are 3 different things, what you just said, right? What I love is the last one. Do they have questions about it, And my thing is, in terms of intervening directly on something they have to do, as little as possible. is necessary. Are there times when it comes that, okay, well, we need to sit down and work through this together? But that should come only after we have a parent-teacher conference with the three of us, and we've said, okay, we need for the next week to set some more clear schedule on when homework is best for you, and I'll be around in that. But until you get to that point, then just make it, have they asked you for help? Right? And if they haven't, then wait 3 weeks. Wait 3 weeks and see what happens. Wait 3 weeks until the progress report comes out in the email or something. And then between then and then, try your best to not let their performance in school define your relationship with them. And for some of you, this is like the hardest thing imaginable, right? What am I supposed to just let them? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. This is about handing more and more of their life over to them every year. More and more of their life, more and more of their scheduling, because they have to develop these natural resources to manage their own lives, taste their own mistakes, but celebrate their own victories and prompt themselves to do things the way they want to do them and discover what those things are. And that's the greatest thing in the world, when what they hear from you is respect. What they feel from you is respect, that this is your work. Not, well, sucks for you, it's not mine. No, it's not totally hands off, but it's definitely not totally hovering over. I'm present, I love you, I believe in you, and I believe that you want to do well. And so I'm here to answer questions, and there are times when I'm going to ask questions, but it's not going to be every day.
Okay, another question. How do you let your kids feel the natural consequences without letting them make poor decisions that affect a future that they don't even understand yet? So we had several people write in who have kids who are maybe juniors, seniors in high school. So it's getting close to launch time, and maybe they have senioritis, or they just don't give a rip about their grades and maybe don't understand the consequence. How do you?
Right now, you and I, Sarah, I think have a competition for the most senioritis kids on the planet, right? Your son and my son. Wow. And I get it, man. The guys just, they're months away. I totally get. My wife has taught seniors for 20 years, and so springtime is about this time. February is just awful. Yes, those are natural lulls, but you know what? Junior year, all right. If it's junior year and they're suddenly going to try and make up for, it's not going to happen. What you can begin talking to them about is what can we do now and what options are available to us, right? So Ivy League is no longer available to us, available to you because of this, but what is available to you? And so begin to again talk in very positive terms. If it's before 8th grade, absolutely freaking let them fail, because it does not count on anything for college applications until 8th grade, and they start taking senior level classes. And the sooner they do that, the better. Love for them to fail before that. 6th grade is a great time to fail something, right? To really, because what happens in 6th grade is a lot more autonomy. Right? You're now no longer in one class all day, you're in a bunch of classes, and it's up to you to figure out how to get between those classes, right? It's up to you to figure out how to change your brain from one, transition your brain from one to another. So you can preach about the negative consequences of the future all day long, but begin again to get curious with them. What do they think about their struggles? What do they think about the future? I guarantee you, they're a junior, they're scared. They are scared because they are feeling pressure, right? And and on top of all of the incredible social pressure they feel every day. It is a difficult time in life. 11th grade is the most difficult year academically. Those are the grades that all college applications are going to have on them. That's a ton of pressure. They don't need more pressure from us. That doesn't mean we totally back off, but it does mean we come to them with a level of understanding and respect that they're living in a different time. That the pressures they face are different than the ones that we face, that we cannot fully understand how they feel. And preaching them till we're blue, to them till we're blue in the face about, well, it's going to happen, blah, 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 that does not motivate them in any way other than to figure out a way to shut you up. What they love to hear from you is respect. What they love to hear from you is curiosity. What they love to hear from you is this recognition that they are on a path that you are not in control of, that they are on a path that they are in charge of. And you are here to walk alongside them and equip them as much as possible. And if there's anything that they can think of that you can do differently, that you're willing to do, you're willing to do that. If they want to fail, right, they will. Figure it out. Here's a message of hope. Like I told you, I stunk in high school, and I failed chemistry and algebra in 11th grade. I graduated only because I wrote a 10-page paper to my US history teacher the day before graduation. She just gave me this chance, and I did it. And I think I graduated, I don't know, 550 out of 600, something like that. And here I am. I graduated in 4 years from college. I went to 5 different colleges, still graduated in 4 years. Then I did 2 different master's degrees, and I've written books and traveled the world and had people work, in our company who went to Northwestern and Georgia Tech and blah, blah, blah. Let the story play itself out. That's another good message to remember, that what they're struggling with may be a product of what's going on in your home, but that maybe they need to struggle with stuff. What you need to do is not take it personally. Take it seriously, but don't take it personally, because it's not a reflection on you.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with the idea of letting younger children fail. The more often they can learn to fail and recover from that early on, the better.
Yep.
So yeah, I echo that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have another question here from Allison. And this is really kind of about logistics. So this is an elementary school aged kid who is getting home from school, probably worn out from school, wants to go play, but then doesn't want to do homework when he comes in. She's tried letting him do homework first and then go play. And all in all, he's distracted and nothing seems to be working. So any advice on how to handle that?
Well, you're setting up a structure, and I like that. You're trying different structures. The goal is to have him begin to own that structure best. And it may be that he doesn't work in big chunks of time, like 2 hours of homework, and then you can go play. There's some kids who work, look, you have no more than 10 minutes, right? And then you're taking a break. I remember we did that at one point with our son, and just said 15-minute chunks and figured out that works best for him. Then he goes and shoots baskets outside, and then 15 minutes. And he would ask, would you set a timer, right? But what we did was just offer him that, look, there's lots of different ways to skin this cat. You don't have to play first. You don't have to do homework right away. Some days and schedule dictates differently because of practices and whatever that comes up. But involve them in the process. This is a process of me walking along beside you, helping you discover what works best for you. You cannot be excused from doing the work of growing up, and you cannot, but you are not going to hear from me that I need you to do this particular way. What kids need most, and you've heard us preach this a million times if you've been with Scream Free very long, but what kids need most are parents who do not need them. I don't need you to make good grades. I don't need you to do it the way I told you to do it. I don't need you to do it in any particular way, right? I don't need anything from you. That's not why I had you. Do I want those things for you? Yes, right. But what I want most is for you to own more and more of your life. And I'm going to help you do that. So get flexible.
Awesome. Okay, here's kind of a heavy one, Hal. And I'm going to read this. This is from Carolyn. She said, my son was recently suspended from school due to being under the influence. Interestingly, he has a cumulative 3.44 GPA. There are lower grades within this that are concerning, but he does so well on other things. So imagine what he could do if he would stay away from drugs. I'm wondering what natural consequences at home there should be for bad grades, and for that matter, what consequences I can give him that the school hasn't already done, like suspension.
Okay. If your kid is under the influence, then you don't need to think about consequences. You need to think about treatment. This is the biggest mistake we have made, and I believe in the last 40 years in our country, is the quote unquote war on drugs mentality. This idea that what needs to happen is they need to be punished for getting drunk or punished for doing drugs or experimenting with whatever. They need to be punished. And so what are the consequences to punish them for that? And the reality is drugs are not a problem. They are a solution. And that's the problem. They are attempting to solve some other problem with a bigger problem. And the problem is that the drugs give them an immediate solution that makes things worse down the line. Well, when you have a developing brain that's not very, very good at delaying gratification to begin with, then drugs even make that worse. So if your kid's under the influence, and let's talk about getting treatment. Have you taken him to counseling, right? Are you drug testing him regularly, right? Have you informed him, as I did with my kids, look, one incident, then we're going to go to counseling. 2 incidences, right? Then you're going to start going to meetings, and I'm gonna take you. 3 incidences, you're going to a treatment center. Why? Because I love you. That's why. Because I'm not going to introduce to you isolation and shame. You want to take somebody who struggles with drugs and turn them into somebody who really abuses them, just interject isolation and shame. Because then that drug will become even more inviting, because it's a quick resolution to that and whatever other problems they were struggling with. So here's what here's a weird way to think about it, but if your kid is regularly doing drugs and he's got a 3.44, here's a weird way to think about it, but you know what? If he weren't doing regular drugs, he might have a worse GPA. Maybe the drugs are helping manage. Maybe he's got something else. Maybe he's got severe ADHD and the drugs are helping calm him down. And so he's self-medicating. You don't know any of that, but he is doing the drugs for some particular reason, and that's what you need to get curious about. Far more than what his grades are, because drugs to a developing brain are incredibly serious.
All right, thanks for that, Hal. We have another question from Kim, and this is what she says. I just got a call from the school saying my 8th grader son is not doing his work in class or at home and is now missing several assignments. Instead of researching on his phone during class, he's playing video games. This is an ongoing complaint from his teachers, and today's call was same complaint, new teacher. When I spoke with my ex-husband, who has all the video games at his home, how he'd like to handle it, the response was, I don't know. Consequences or rewards don't seem to work. Not that my ex has ever imposed a consequence. I need some help negotiating this dynamic.
Well, it gets complicated when you've got a divorced situation and a co-parenting situation, for sure. But you've got multiple teachers calling you about your son, then that's a great time to have a parent-teacher conference with the student in the room. And you are able to set the tone. Hey, we are not here to cast blame on anybody for anything, right? We're assuming that he wants to have a great life, and but something is very, very difficult for him. So we're going to try and find a situation that works. Now, your ex is right. If you're using consequences and punishments and rewards to get better behavior, it won't work. It will not work. That's just exterior motivations clamped on top of them that is eventually going to feel so heavy that they're going to run to whatever little escape they found, whether it's video games or drugs. So if consequences should be natural consequences for their behavior, but it's not, we don't use them to prompt them towards better behavior. Whether or not they behave better is up to them. It's not up to whatever particular consequence we find. And it's a delicate thing. It's a difficult thing to wrap our minds around, but if you just begin with the fact that it's not your responsibility to motivate your kid, either with punishments or rewards, it's not your responsibility. It's not your responsibility. But your responsibility to them is to create a situation that gives them the best chances of discovering their own inner motivation. So what is that? Right? So many times, and I wouldn't be surprised in this case if there's a kid where you can stand over him and he'll do his homework and then he won't even turn it in. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that with families when I had a therapy practice where he was like, yeah, he does the homework. I saw him do it. And then I get a call, he didn't even turn it in. Right? That is an amazing passive aggressive way for the kid to tell everybody it's not your life. And I will punish myself just to prove it. We don't know all what's going on. When in divorce cases, I'm always holding it out there that this is a way for him to passive aggressively get mom and dad back together. Now, that doesn't mean back together romantically, but it can mean back together where at least you're able to talk. You're able to co-parent together, where he's able to see that you guys can be in the same room. And I saw it a lot when I did counseling a lot, where I would tell the kid, well, thank you so much for doing whatever it took, your drug use or whatever, to finally get your parents in the same room. So get in the same room. Mom, dad, teachers, student, positive all the way through. Even when you don't think your ex is as positive as you, just saying, hey, you know what? I'm trying to make this the best situation. I realize I can only control what goes on in my home, the environment in my home, but I can't control what he does. But I can communicate to him that I love you and I respect you and I'm willing to engage in uncomfortable conversations with your father and your teachers to do what's best for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, we have another one. And this question is, how do you help smart teens who've mostly breezed through school getting A's without needing to study much, start learning how to study now that courses are getting more challenging? He's never had to work hard, doesn't want to start now. We don't want to pressure, but also don't want him to miss out.
Yeah, well, then let him miss out. That's the best way. Is you can say, you know what, it's probably going to mean you're going to have to learn to study more, but he's only going to listen to himself in that regard. And as long as he's hearing us, he can't hear himself nearly as much. And so you can just, and the problem is when he does start to struggle, God, it's so hard not to, well, I told you you're going to have to study, right? You know, I told you so. And any and all of its forms is just a horrible way to do relationship. So what does it look like for me to, this stuff. Remember, what do you need from me? So, man, this is tough. So what you going to do? That was one of my favorite questions. It's a little judo maneuver to come alongside them. Man, yeah, this is getting really hard. And if they say, I've never had to study before. Yeah. So what you going to do about it? Not a, what are you going to do? It's just a curiosity. So what you going to do? Like you would do if your neighbor's kid came over and he was talking to you about it. Oh, so what you going to do? What's your plan? I don't know. Okay, let me know how I can help. Then when it's your own kid, and when it's a neighbor's kid, you can just walk away from that and not think about it. When it's your own kid, oh, good night. It's hard to not think about it. But go do your own homework. That's always that was my mantra to myself. Because I always had stuff I needed to be doing. So every time I felt drawn to hover when they had not asked me, I would say, Al, do your own homework. Go do your own homework. Go do your own homework. You get a call from the teacher, okay, then let's intervene. Hey, I'm ready. How can I help? Right. But go do your own homework.
That's a good mantra.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling you're going to have a similar kind of mantra about the next question. I'm going to combine several different folks. Cool. They've talked about the emotions that their kids have, either while doing homework or talking about school. There's the extreme worrier. There's the kid who starts to struggle and so mentally spirals down. How do you help your kid with their own emotional responses to maybe struggling or worrying, et cetera, when they're dealing with schoolwork?
And here's why I love that is because then that stuff you can help much more with, because when they're struggling with these emotions, and then your calm becomes calming. And it's a cheesy way to remember it, but I always said this to myself: how when you are calm and present, you become a calming presence. Get calm and close, right? Just like I had to do when my son was having night terrors. It's really the same thing. I can't hug it out of him. I'm not going to run away from him. I'm just going to be present alongside him and become eventually a calming influence. And you can even think about your words, man. So what's the hardest part about this for you? Right? What do you wish were different? Get really curious questions. What do you, if you could redo it, right? If you could wave a magic wand, it's an old therapy question. It's called the magic question. You have a magic wand and you say what would be different. And then when they begin to talk about stuff, they will eventually come around to things they can do differently. But your main job is to listen and be present. And that's how you actually help them learn to manage those emotions. Telling somebody to calm down doesn't work. Telling somebody manage your emotions better doesn't work, because you're not managing your own emotions, because you're preaching at them. So manage my own emotions and getting calm with them, because they do feel pressure. I mean, more than the unmotivated kids, I see the exact opposite spectrum now, where kids are killing themselves to be perfect students because they know all the competition that awaits, and they're feeling expectations from everybody. And they go to high pressure schools or whatever, and they know that colleges are turning everybody down, and they're driving themselves crazy with that. And so I would be more ready to intervene with that case than a totally unmotivated, and say, okay, you're taking a break. And this sounds crazy, but I would take my kids out of school and take them to lunch. If I noticed they were really stressing out, you know what, hey dude, I'm taking you to lunch today, just to have a brief respite from that. But also don't also count out that they absolutely could benefit from talking to somebody, be a school counselor, right? Or a counselor that you go to them with, that just hear from you that I'm here ready to help you manage this thing that's becoming more and more of yours every year, this life of yours.
Sweet. Okay, Hal, I'm going to give you a challenge. You got 1 minute to answer the last question, okay?
Okay.
All right. What do you think about things like listening to music while doing homework and other working environment conditions?
I can do it. My wife can't. My son can do it. My daughter can't. I can do it with jazz, because there's no jazz with no vocals, but I can't do it with music that has lyrics to it. It's a wonderful personal preference, you know, and that's what this is. Their homework is theirs. It is their personal task. So help them figure out, but don't tell them because you can't listen to music that they shouldn't be able to, or they shouldn't do it. Everything is about, when you get to a measure of respect, that this is a separate person whose life is going to launch from mine sooner than I can imagine, then you begin with that understanding. And then it's all about learning to respect and help them respect themselves and figure out for them what works. And only telling them what works for you when they've asked you. And that is the biggest thing. Think about, one thing I want you to think about, how would I parent in such a way that they would actually ask me for help with school? What would I have to do? How long would I have to back off before they would actually ask me? What would I have to communicate to them other than school stuff? What would I talk to them about other than school stuff? Enough to let them know that I don't just think of them as a homework robot designed to ease my anxiety about their future. What would I do so that they would actually own it themselves and come to me and ask me? In many ways, that's so much the goal of parenting. And it is difficult. But the main thing is it's a switch. It's not how do I equip me to manage them, it's how do I equip them to manage themselves.
I think that's a great line to end on, actually. But before we end, I do have a couple other things to say to you guys. And I want to share some resources for you, some resources that are available to you. Many of you have already signed up for the Pause platform, and the feedback that we've been getting on that has been fantastic. So thank you for that. And in fact, the Pause platform is a great resource for this very topic. The whole topic of grades and homework, we have quite a few activities on there that pertain exactly to that. And so I want to take a chance to show you some of that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to hope that this works as I want it to. So let me move this out of the way. This is actually the Pause platform right here. And so we will enter through the Screen-Free Parenting program itself, and I want to show you a couple of the steps that are available that speak directly to this topic. So I'm going to come down here to level 3, and we have a blog post that is called "My Son's Homework is Slipping." So actually, it's not a blog post. This is an Ask the Expert. So here is somebody's question, much like some of the questions that you guys have sent in yourselves, asking about that very thing, and you scroll down, and there's Hal's response to it. We also, on this same level, we have a responsible to versus responsible for mirror activity. So our mirror activities are a chance for you guys to reflect on the things that you're learning. So the whole idea of being responsible to versus responsible for, I know Hal mentioned some of that in his talks today. So that's on there. This is a chance to think through, what would it be like to be a responsible for parent? This is particular activity right here. Your 4th grader decides to procrastinate, one of the very things that we were talking about. So how would a responsible for parent respond to that? How would a responsible to parent? We also have a challenge, and so here is, depending on how you would how you score on our parenting personality profile. Also, with this platform, you get to answer a bunch of questions that will help you figure out your strengths and your struggles as a parent. And then you're given this little profile that directs how you progress through some of this material. And this is one in particular. So we have caregivers and champions who maybe tend to be a little bit more involved with their kids. And so here are some challenges specifically right here around homework that will help you figure out how you can better equip your kids. Consultants and coaches tend to be a little bit more hands-off. And so again, we have an activity on how you can help out with homework too. So there are several more things down here. Level 5 has a mirror activity that pertains to anxiety. So I know Hal talked a lot about the anxiety that we as parents have that naturally drives us to want to be over involved. And so that activity deals with it. Several more throughout. I want to point out one on level 10. We have this video that is a really cool video. It's a school in New Zealand, and I know this doesn't totally pertain to grades and homework, but it's about a school in New Zealand who did away with all rules during recess. And so no, they could play with sticks, they didn't have to wear their shoes, they could throw things, they could climb fences. You see these kids right here climbing trees. It is a mind-blowing video, and so that's on here as well. So there's quite a bit on homework and grades in this platform because, as we mentioned, it's a hot topic for just about every parent out there. So I know a number of you have asked about the free trial, and yes, there absolutely is a free trial, and we're not talking just like a 2-minute video, but the full 11 steps of this first level right here. So it's like an hour's worth of interactive content, and it's completely free to you. It definitely gives you a taste of the platform and some great info as well. And some of you have asked how you sign up for the whole platform after that trial is over. And this last step right here is a little video from Hal. It shows you exactly what you get with the platform. And then down here, you can also have this free trial coupon. click here to purchase it. But I tell you what, for you guys who have stayed all the way to the bitter end of this webinar, I want to give you a separate coupon, and that is webinar 40 with a capital W, webinar 40. You will be able to save 40% today, just today, until midnight Eastern, if you want to purchase the platform today. So if you haven't even gone on the platform yet and you don't even know what I'm talking about, you can go to pauseplatform.com and there's information there. You don't have to enroll in the entire program. You certainly can. There's the enroll button. We also have a 12 monthly payment plan of $19.95 a month. That is that button right there for the monthly plans. And if you just want to do the free trial, which is awesome as well, you can click on that. There's no credit card, no risk associated with the free trial at all. You just have to type in your email. That's it. So we hope you guys have enjoyed this webinar. Thank you so much for all your questions and your interactions. We really do appreciate that. And we want you to know that we have another webinar coming up on March 21st. And that will be on chores and responsibility. And I'm sure none of you guys have issues with any of those topics, so I'm sure we won't have any questions submitted about that. So anyway, yes, that will be March 21st at 11 a.m. So thanks once again, and Hal, do you have any last parting words?
Yes, thank you guys so much. I love talking to you from my new office, home office and set, and you're going to see a lot of videos from this place. It's interesting. We're talking about this, and while we're talking, I get a text from my 21-year-old daughter, junior in college, saying, "Dad, this week is hard. Can you talk?" And that is the incredible reward of parenting in such a way that you respect that this is their life. And the fact that I still get these "Hey, can you talk?" requests from her is, I think, the best testimony to this way of parenting. That's what we all want. And you can have that when you begin, again, like we've said this whole day, begin thinking, how can I equip them to manage themselves? That's our job.
Awesome. Yeah, so we look forward to seeing you guys on March 21st. And I think Lacey had sent in a question, how do we sign up for March 21st? There will be an email that will go out with a link for you to sign up at that time. So thanks a bunch. Wish you guys a great day.